Hey everyone, it's Robert Hall, and in today's video, I want to share somewhat of a secret weapon that I've been using for quite a long time now, as much as 6 months. I think it was about 6 months ago that I shared a reel of a studio session that I did where I posted like 35 or 40 shots that I did the previous night. Got some comments in there, people asking me, well, wow, how did you already retouch all of those? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I do want to say, I know it has been a long time since I have uploaded a video, going through a lot of life changes right now as we prepare for our first child, which could literally come any day now. Not only did that require a lot of life planning, I just really wanted to enjoy a summer before our lives changed so drastically. Anyway, let's get into the software that I want to go over today, and that is Retouch4Me, which is a series of plugins. I'll be going over about 6 of them today that either work standalone or they can be used in Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Lightroom, captureOne. Now, if at any point you're looking at these and you're deciding, I really want these in my workflow, just so you know, I've got them linked in the description below, and that is a 20% off discount code. And just so you guys know, for full transparency here, these guys reached out to me way back in March when there was only 3 utilities, and they're like, do you want to check it out? I did. I fell in love with it. They added more. I've put it through a lot of paces over the last 6 months before I even decided to ever do anything with them, and I'm not receiving any money in exchange for this video. All right, let's jump into actually using these filters. I'm going to show you how the first one works, and just so you can see kind of the interface and everything, I'm going to go to Filter in Photoshop, down to Retouch4Me, and that expands to show all of the options, which there are 7, not 6. Sorry, I'd forgotten about one. But we've got Retouch4Me White Teeth, Retouch4Me Skin Tone, Portrait Volumes, Heal, Eye Vessels, Dodge Burn, and Clean Backdrop. All right, since Shannon has such a big and bright smile in this photo, we are going to start with the White Teeth option. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to open a window right here. And maybe you guys can hear it, the fan popping on my PC. We'll talk more about that in a second. But there is this option right here that has high resolution and it's checked. It will go slower if high resolution is checked. It will go faster if high resolution is not checked. But if you don't check high resolution, it's going to just be a little bit more loose overall. With high resolution checked, it's just going to perform with more accuracy, giving you cleaner edges and everything. It's important to note, this has nothing to do with the resolution of your camera. It's not like if you're using a high res 60 megapixel camera like I am, that you have to turn it on. Nothing to do with it. It's only the accuracy at which it's going to perform the action with. But I pretty much always use high resolution on just because I'm commonly delivering at very high resolution. So I want it to be accurate, even if people zoom in or if they print large. But if you're just posting to Instagram or something like that, I think using the high resolution off is perfectly fine. Now you can see each of these is going to have some settings up here. We've got brighten and whiten. So this is just like if you were applying a Lightroom adjustment with a brush. Whiten, the higher you make it, is like dropping the saturation of the brush, and brighten, the higher you make it, is like increasing the exposure or increasing the whites. Same level of control here. You can see I can toggle the preview on and off. I can also check make mask in the upper right corner, which if I'm performing this on its own layer, then all of the adjustments that it makes are going to be applied to its own layer, so it's easy to remove it. Not so important for this one, but I do tend to use that on the others, and we'll go over that in a little bit. If I click here, you can see where the effect is applied to, and you can see it's like a cutout of her teeth there. It did a really good job of only hitting those. So we're gonna hit apply just so you guys can see this a little bit closer. Here's without the effect, here's with the effect. And it's definitely not like Shannon needed it beforehand, but you can clearly see that it brightens the smile. Now I'm gonna go back and undo it, and I'm gonna do it again, but I'm gonna add it on another layer. This time I'm going to run it with high resolution off just so you guys can see the example or the difference with that. It still looks really good. You really have to zoom in close to see any difference. You see, it still did a really good job of masking out her teeth. Also, you do have the option, if you're trying to check out the effects, you can use the zoom right here to get in here, right? And that's where you can kind of decide if you need to decrease the whitening or increase the brightening, anything like that. You can change those settings while zoomed in really close. But again, we've got this on another layer. So if anything, you could go a little bit heavy, and then you could scale back the opacity, reducing the intensity of the effect. Now this time we had high resolution off, and I just want to show you, if we zoom in really close here, you can see along the gum line here, that it didn't do quite as good of a job as the high resolution at masking out the difference between her gums and her teeth. So the effect kind of bleeds out onto the gums a lot more. I think that there's a use case for both the high resolution and the regular or non-high resolution version. And so it's cool that you get to choose between those, because for some people, speed is going to be more important, especially if they're running this in bulk actions. And for other people, they're going to want more of that accuracy. All right, now we're going to get into the two that I've been using the most, which is the heal option and the dodge and burn option. So I've already done them because I don't want you guys to sit here watching the bar load the whole time, and I've done them on their own layers so that I can just toggle between them. But heal is what is going to go through and remove minor skin imperfections. So if I toggle that on, you see around the cheek right here, those small bumps in the skin, those are getting removed. And this doesn't just apply to the face. You can see if I go down on the neck here, it even does it right there. A few bumps up here on the forehead are removed. Now this talent has incredible skin to start with, so it's not like this filter had to work much, but it is nice to see that you can put this in. And what's great about it is that it's not affecting like anything not on the face, right? Like if I'm turning this on, you don't see any weirdness in the hair or in the ear over here, on the edges of the face. And that's where a lot of software, at least automatic software that I've used in the past, has really performed poorly. And another very awesome tool is the dodge and burn tool. So the dodge and burn utility from Retouch4Me is simply going through and it's looking at very small areas that are too bright, and it's darkening them, and it's looking for areas that are too dark and it's brightening them. And overall that evens out tones, making the portrait appear smoother overall, and really does a great job of like easing transitions from light to dark, so you just get a more polished look. But it's a rather subtle effect, right? If we're all the way out here, you can only see it in a few spots. But if we zoom in, like if I zoom into the nose right here, see everything that it's doing underneath the eye. It's actually pulling a lot of work here. Now I do want to take a moment here as we're talking about healing and dodging and burning, and just say that I think we're still very far out from AI or any type of automatic software really replacing the human touch, especially those who are really skilled at it. I'm not trying to say this is cancel your retoucher, but for anyone working in a volume fashion, these type of utilities are really helpful. This might be work that you're not doing. You might not be doing any dodging and burning to your wedding photos because you're distributing so many photos. It's just not consistent with the business, but now you can kind of add in some of that look. Maybe not quite as great as a professional retoucher, but you get 90% without having any additional effort from you, because this can all happen while you sleep. Now, I do want to make a criticism here. One of the areas where this struggles is freckles. If we zoom in on this portrait, you can see that Nicole here has a lot of freckles, and it just removes some of them, and that's not something I would want to do. That is authentic skin texture. I would not want to remove that. And I think this is always going to be the biggest challenge of any automatic software. There's also some spots on here that I would have addressed. Like I probably would have fixed up spots like right here if I were retouching this, and those weren't addressed by the heal filter. I just think it gets a little bit confused with freckles, which is understandable considering its contrast on skin. That's what it's looking for. That's what it's going to remove. And unfortunately, freckles just fall under that category. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the clean background function. And I have this one on its own layer here. And we're also going to remove the background and just look at exactly what it did. So again, this is the Retouch4Me clean backdrop. And the whole purpose of this is to remove any issues caused by dirt or debris or weird shadows on a background and just make them smoother overall. And it does a pretty good job, because if I turn it off, here's what we started with. You can see we've got some like wrinkles in the background right here, right here, right here. You know, a little bit of a gradient, some cross shadows from the lighting. There's a few issues on this background, and if I turn this on, this reduces a lot of them. And I think in an instance like this, where we've got a relatively clean background, it works pretty well. There is this spot right here that looks a little bit sketchy. And if I remove the background layer, this is everything that the software decided to do. And this is one criticism here, is that it just has a tough time identifying what's background and what is person, right? Or what is subject. Because as you can see on this layer, it did a lot of adjustments to the subject's jeans, and it did a lot of adjustments to her shirt. I'll give it credit. It didn't touch the model's skin at all. completely left her face alone. Maybe there's a little spot right here, but it does have a knack for getting those clothes and smoothing everything out. And so it might be hard to see when you're looking at it like this, like what did it do? But if I zoom in here on the jeans, this is with the filter applied. You can see some parts that are smoothed out. And that's just not what you want. You don't want to be removing the detail from your clothing, right? And I want to show another example here because I do think that this is the most flawed option that Retouch4Me sells. Again, it does do its job. I'm going to turn it on here, and you can see if we look over here, that's a pretty big difference, right? Gets rid of lots of patchiness. It kind of smooths things out overall, but I'm going to turn off the background layer, and we're going to turn on only the adjustments that it made, and all of a sudden you see little parts of skin that it hit. You see clothing, again, all this denim that it started messing with. Some really weird stuff happened down here as it tried to remove some of these larger pieces. Like we got a piece of hair there, we've got some pieces of the flower, right? It struggled with those. I think they were a little bit too big for the filter, and then we get this weird green effect. And then also, if we are looking at some of those parts on the skin, like look right here, what is that? That doesn't work. So if you're going to get this clean backdrop one, because you want to clean paper backgrounds, just know I would really recommend putting it on a separate layer, because what I would do is come in here and erase or brush out, mask out something to get all of this texture back on the clothing. I wouldn't want my filter adjusting any of that. All right, next up we have the Eye Vessels filter, and the Eye Vessels filter, just like it sounds, is going to remove vessels in the eye. So here is how the portrait started. I'm going to zoom in like crazy on this eye. Here's the perks of having an A7R4. So if I toggle this on, you can see it gets rid of these little eye vessels right here as well as over here, and it does so very naturally. Now what's particularly impressive about this is these eyes are maybe 2% of the portrait overall, and it's still making that fine of an adjustment that it's coming in here and just modifying a few lines of pixels, but doing it really, really well. So love the eye vessels option, because that's just something that you don't want to get in and do on a bunch of different portraits, but this can polish it up and make everybody's eyes look a little bit better. The next thing I want to show you is these filters applied one right after another. And we're also going to talk about two others that you haven't seen yet. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is important for batch processing. And if you don't know, batch processing is when you set it up so a series of adjustments will apply to a group of images. And if you set it up all right, it can be completely hands-off. You can run it on 1,000 photos overnight and your editing just happens automatically, which is amazing when it goes well. But in order to do batch processing, you really need to have confidence in the utilities that you're applying. So I want to show you guys what it looks like when you just apply 5 of these right in a row. So this is the original file, and I believe, yeah, this is on a DNG. So this is a raw file, completely unadjusted. First thing I would do is apply the heal just to get rid of any little raised areas in the skin. Then next up is the skin tone one, and this one is fantastic, but it's really subtle, so I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it. But I'm going to zoom in really close underneath Emily's eye right here, and I want you to see how this area right here is a little bit pinker or more magenta than the surrounding area of her skin. And that's exactly what the skin tone filter from Retouch4Me adjusts. So if I turn it on, you can see that this area gets a little bit more green, a little bit warmer, and that just unifies it with the rest of the skin. So what this filter does is it looks for average colors, and then it looks for areas that are outliers, and it tries to just unify them. Again, it does it all without getting weird when you get into the non-skin area of the portrait. So that's fantastic. Now, the next one I would add is the dodge and burn. Again, this is the micro dodge and burn. So this is just going to kind of ease those transitions in the skin. So anything left over from the heel is going to be reduced, and it's just going to create a really nice polished look to the image overall. Then Emily already has like really crazy bright eyes, but if we pop that eye vessels on, then we're going to get rid of all those little minor vessels in the eyes. Now there is this one little vessel right here, right over the eyelid, but I have to say I would much rather it doesn't touch that vessel than it screws up the bottom of the eyelid, right? We don't want to like screw up the non-eye area. So the fact that it doesn't touch that one at all, I just think is equally impressive. And then the final filter, I'm going to zoom out to show you this one, is portrait volumes. And portrait volumes, instead of a micro dodge and burn, like the dodge and burn action, is a macro dodge and burn to just overall add contrast. It's going to darken your darks, it's going to brighten your brights, and watch this one, boom. Now you can control this effect, and this is pretty intense because I wanted to show you, but honestly, I think this is consistent with what a lot of people are like aesthetically chasing on Instagram. You can see this is affecting all these different areas of the face. I'm going to kind of go back and forth here, including the eyes. I mean, we are darkening this cheekbone, darkening the nose, brightening the bridge of the nose, brightening the eyes, brightening the iris. It's doing so much work. This is one that I would go ahead and apply with a lot of intensity, but I would do so on a different layer. That way I have the option once I apply it to reduce the effect overall, because if I were delivering this, I certainly wouldn't go this far with it. I would probably drop it more into this range so that it's a bit more subtle. And before we stop talking about volumes, I want to call attention to the shoulder and top of the chest area right here. If I turn these on and off and you watch those areas, you can see that they got dodged, right? Those two areas got brightened. So despite the fact that there was no skin tone there, it's still identified that these are areas that you would typically dodge and burn around. You typically want that shoulder right there. You want that highlight to be a little bit more intense than the rest of the arm, right? And I'm just impressed overall that it identified that area and made it look pretty natural, despite the fact that it's just black. Like the shirt is completely black, hair right there, that's black, but it was still able to identify that spot as something that would typically be brightened. I'm really impressed by that. Last thing I want to show you is a full body, because everything that I showed you beforehand was really close up so that you could see the effect, but it does work. It is going to be looking for skin tones throughout an entire body, a full body portrait, right? So in this example, we've got like a 3/4 portrait, and I have the volumes effect, which again is that macro dodge and burn. And if I turn this on and off, you can see even down here, the legs and the shin, it is still affecting those areas. So it's looking at the total body and making those decisions, not just faces. All right, so I'm really happy with these overall. If I had to rank them, I think the clean backdrop needs the most work. Like that one, there's just many times where it did what it was supposed to, but there was many times where I got some adverse effects as well. So I wouldn't mind that one getting a little bit more work in general. The teeth whitening one, I think, is like the least utility overall. And that's simply because I think that is the easiest to do without automatic work. So I could easily go into Lightroom. I can make a brush that is -20 saturation, plus 0.3 exposure. And that's going to do a good job at whitening teeth. But it's still very useful if you're working it into an overall batch processed action. All of the other ones, dodge burn, eye vessels, portrait volumes, heal, skin tone, I think they are all fantastic at what they do. And when you start building actions with them for batch processing, I think that's when they get most powerful. I do want to show you guys how I would quickly build out a batch process here. So I have a folder called Auto Touch for if I'm doing any of these auto retouching. I'm going to make a new one right here, and we're just going to call it Heal Volume. Okay, we're now recording because we named it. So you can see this red bar, that means we're recording the action. I'm gonna run the heal filter. And when I come in here, any parameters that I save, like the sensitivity or whether I use high resolution or not, will be recorded to this action. So we'll keep it on regular resolution. Immediately after that, we're going to run the portrait volumes. Again, we'll leave high resolution off. Now you can see these are working pretty fast when they're not in the high resolution option. All right, and there's the volumes one added, and now I could add a save function to this if I wanted to, or I can stop. And if I open these up, you can see sensitivity setting is saved without high res, without make mask. Like you can set these up for all of those little internal functions. You can have those set however you want. So you can really tweak these, make a custom action for a specific project, whatever you want. You have full control creating actions. Now, I do wish there was no manual process to that. I wish that Retouch4Me created a launcher that allowed me to choose. It just showed me the parameters of all these and I could turn them on and off. That way I could go in and select, 4 out of 7 of the options. I could adjust the parameters to my liking, maybe do so on a sample photo, and then apply that to a whole folder of images. I have given them that critique and they have said that that is something that is in the works. Hopefully they can get that out soon. The next negative is that these are very resource intensive, specifically for your CPU. So if I pop open right here to my performance tab and I'm going to start running dodge burn in high resolution, which is I think the biggest offender. High resolution on, start the clock, it's 11:40 and you're going to see that is barely going by and my CPU is immediately at 100% and it is going to stay at 100% until this filter is done, which is probably going to be a couple minutes. Now, in terms of timing here, dodge and burn in high resolution is definitely the one that takes the longest. It's looking most closely at the image. Eye vessels, volumes, heal, those take a medium amount of time in their high resolution. The clean backdrop and the teeth whitening one, those ones happen really quick. I don't have any complaints about their speed, but just know that when you go to start building out these actions that you can get into, if you're using like 3 or 4 filters, you can get into 5 minutes plus per photo. So if you're going to batch process, 250 photos for the first time, just keep in mind that it is going to take some serious time. But the fact that it can happen without you doing anything is still really nice. And one minor critique is that there is some type of security issue with the downloader, such that if you're installing this on Windows, then you have to click that bar that says this is unsafe and run it anyways. And while I've had no problems and I've monitored my computer and it's perfectly fine, they do need to do something to update that security certificate. I don't actually know what needs to be changed, but there is something they need to do to make this a little bit more install friendly. So hopefully they adjust that too. Now, getting into the price, these are all slightly over $100 each. In the description below, there is a coupon code for 20% off. So if you follow that link, then you'll save 20% if you're interested in any of these, all of these. I understand that feels like a lot of money, but just keep in mind, when it comes to doing professional photography and distributing, especially if you're distributing a high volume of images, having things that will automatically take care of some of your efforts will just mean more time for you shooting. So for instance, I look at this is either a value add in the fact that I can add that dodge and burn, add those healing functions to galleries that I normally wouldn't include them, or it's just a complete time saver in that I don't have to go through, say, 40 headshots and apply all these minor adjustments. Instead, this software is going to do it for me. And for me, the moment this software saves me 10 hours, it's paid for itself, all 7 of them. Now, I'm not trying to tell everybody to go buy. I completely understand it's got to make sense for your business. If you have any questions about something like that, then go ahead and let me know in the comments below. But to anybody who's delivering a high volume of photos and just wants to elevate what they're doing on every delivered photo, then I think the options from Retouch4Me are just absolutely worth taking a look at and trying out for yourself. You can also download these as a free trial, check them out, see how they work on your images, see how they fit into your workflow before you commit to purchasing anything, which is also a bonus. So follow that link below if you're interested. Let me know if you have any questions about this software. Oh, it just finished up. It took 4 minutes to run the dodge and burn at 100% high resolution on an A7R4 60 something megapixel file. So that's it. All right, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take it easy. I'll see you in the next one.